Welcome back, and we're moving into our second conversation for today as we find out more about an upcoming lecture taking place this Friday in Belmopan, talking about the youth's perspective on the Belize-Guatemala dispute and the ICJ. Joining me this morning to be able to tell me more, we have Gian Vasquez, who's a lecturer at SJCJC. We have Dr. Abigail Mckoy, who's the chair of the Belize History Association. And we have Rolando Cocom, who's a researcher at the Institute for Social and Cultural Research with NICH. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Okay, so we're talking youth perspectives here.
Yes.
Let me just start off with you, Dr. Mckoy, of course, talking about the lecture series and how the decision was made to go this route this year.
Well, the History Association is doing its annual lecture series during the September celebrations. Granted, we are post-independence celebrations, but we're still in September.
Yes.
And so the scheduling was a little bit tough. But we decided that we wanted to give voice to youth perspective based on the exercise that was done by Social Security Board, its annual debate at the junior college level. And the topic is a topic that is timely. It is the conversation, the Belize-Guatemala dispute, the ICJ, and young people not only have a voice when they get up on the stage to debate, but they actually have a perspective. And we thought it was important for us to showcase, to highlight the perspectives that they took, and to also just get their general opinions beyond the debate focus. We also decided that we wanted to not limit ourselves to Belize City, and so the lecture is being held in Belmopan.
Okay, and you have participants from where?
High schools, junior colleges, the general public, in terms of the audience.
Yeah.
And
presenters?
In terms of the presenters, we have representation from the winning debate teams, the schools, Stancrick Ecumenical, Stancrick, how do you say it?
Ecumenical
Junior College, yes. And Independence Junior College.
Okay.
And also from St. John's College, Junior College.
Okay.
So they are representing their schools and their presentations that they had made. So we are taking all the affirmative and the negative perspectives or the pros and cons and looking at that, but also having young people speak to what they see.
Yeah. Now, Gian, obviously, I'm sure you're working with the students as well. Before we talk about what the specific presentation will be from your students, enlighten us. What is the conversation like with tertiary level students about this issue?
The conversation when we're dealing with going to the ICJ, from what I've seen, is that our students are not really well informed. And most of the information that they do receive comes from the media. And this is a timely conversation that we're going to have because the perspective of the youth needs to come out.
Yeah.
They are transitioning, especially at the junior college, from being not voting to becoming a voter. And they are going to have to participate and conduct their civic duties as part of the electorate. And so we need to inform them. There are some who have embraced this idea and want to know more about what is the ICJ, what's happening between Belize and Guatemala. Because they hear the noise. They hear the noise in the media, they hear the noise at home. And I even receive certain comments from students, sir, my father says this about this issue, or my father says this thing about George Price selling Belize to Guatemala, or you hear all sorts of things coming out. And as history lecturer there, it's my duty to kind of set the record straight on what, yes, this happened, that didn't happen, what's the perspective. Because we want to inform them. And having that conversation allows me to be able to give more information and for them to use their own reasoning to arrive at a decision. Because going to the ICJ is something big for our country.
Absolutely.
It's their future is at stake. Because we're going to get old, and even if we go to the ICJ it's 5 years before decision is made.
Yeah, it's going to be a very lengthy process.
They are going to all be voters by then.
Yeah.
And this is going to impact them. So I think speaking to youths, some are concerned, some are still into Facebook, WhatsApp, Snapchat, and really could not be bothered. And so I think for us, our main issue is how to make it relevant to them.
Yes.
Because they don't see the relevance and emergency of this issue.
That is such an important point, and I really wanted to get to that, so I'm glad you brought it up. As historians, as a researcher, as persons who really have a wealth of information and oftentimes are challenged to share it with people, there's a very interesting perspective when it comes to the Belize Guatemala issue. There is so much history. For persons who perhaps are only becoming acquainted with the issue today, we know of the referendum, we know of issues in Chiquibo, we know of issues in Sarstoon. I'd imagine that's perhaps the extent of what your students or the young people may know. But when tasked with informing people about this issue, it is important to go all the way back to the 1859 treaty. Now, if I can recall being in school at tertiary level, I had no interest in what happened in 1859. So it's a very difficult situation. The historical context is important because it shows all the different processes that have been attempted and why we're here now, why it was suggested we come this route. How do you overcome that?
Telling the story, Marlene.
But in a story format.
History is our story.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that is a methodology or a skill. So it is how our history lecturers are able to tell the story, because the opportunity exists, and this is what will happen for the individuals who will be representing their schools, to go and do the research, to check out where the cases were that ICJ has done in the past, what has become of that. They could explore those for themselves. They could explore all kinds of things. But going through the timeline, the dates, it's a story about Belize. And can you imagine what it looked like back then when this was happening, when the pirates were robbing? Can you imagine that? History is the story.
Yeah.
And if our lecturers or history lecturers can do that kind of thing to get the young people to get caught up in the story, everybody loves a story. I still enjoy it when a story is being told about anything.
Now, is that, I want to bring the Gian, because I really find it's where there's a big disconnect. The minute you start, if we talk about Belize, Guatemala today, there's more interest from younger people when I try to have that conversation. But when I try to take them back into what took place before and how we got here, we lose them.
I think we live in a YouTube generation.
Yeah.
And I saw on the internet recently, I think it's episode 1, where Ernesto Vasquez had done the voiceover for, I think it's the Belize government press office, who made a video. And I think the video is like 8 minutes. It's really good. It's short. Our students now, the attention span is a lot smaller, and you grab them with that. And I think the ICJ, the ICJ itself presents a unique opportunity to tell the story.
Yeah.
And to tell the story in a format that they would be interested in, because you can now present it as a case. The ICJ's, what is Belize's case that we're going to present to the ICJ? And you still end up with the story of where it all begins, because that is the first leg that we're going to go into. And then you get them into becoming more exciting by me personally, by going into the cases that have been presented to the ICJ. Because at SJC, yes, I have one course that deals with this completely, right? It's called the History of Belize International Relations. And so we go in depth into this. And for me, the ICJ presents a unique opportunity to be able to tell this story, but in terms of a case that we are presenting. And so we're kind of tackling two birds with one stone.
Yeah. Yeah, Rolando, obviously, as a researcher with NICH, and we have seen many different approaches taken from ISCR specifically in being able to get information out about this issue. What's the strategy that you use in being able to ensure that while the information oftentimes is so exciting to us, how do we make it excitable to other people?
I totally agree with my colleagues. This need of doing a multifaceted approach to education. And so while a national lecture for us creates this buzz, creates a national buzz about a topic, really there needs to be much more to be done, much more visuals, as Gian is indicating, for the young people. In fact, we'll also have our lecture broadcasting live on Facebook on Friday, so people could check out the Belize History Association page for that. So it really is, we need to begin to think creatively, I think. We need to consult young people and ask them, how can we make this information more relevant to you? And that probably is the next step for us, really an engagement with young people, an engagement with our target audiences, and find out what are the best ways to educate them. The purpose of a national lecture, from my perspective, is that once you bring young people together, it creates a moment in their lives that they can then tell other people. So while the numbers may be somewhat limited in terms of the grand scope of young people in the country, or is selective by choosing only those who are attending essentially high school or tertiary school, it does create a buzz within their family, as Gian is indicating. This is something that people do talk about in their homes. If they're listening to the news, they might react to this, and then this young person can then share an opinion or a perspective on what's going on. And that's the hope. No? That's the hope of creating lectures and creating public forums, is to create a sort of catch the moment in time and just share that story of what happened today. So let people become much more empowered, really.
So how do you format the lecture? Are you giving persons fixed positions to present, or is it simply providing a topic and literally getting the youth perspective?
The way we set it up, Ifashina Efuneme is the assistant chair, the second chair of the History Association, but she is also an integral part of the whole social security debate perspective. So we have really leaned on her expertise to coordinate the process. And in doing so, she discussed with the schools and the focal point, the history lecturer, to talk about what perspective each would do. And so what was also done was a gathering of all the materials from the four major schools that went through the first and second iterations, first place and second place of the debate, and taking all of that material, sharing it with all the schools that were going to participate, and they chose a position, and so they're presenting on that.
So they've already made a decision?
Yes.
Okay. Gian, tell us about how you've been preparing with your students. You have two presenters coming from SJC.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
We have two students that will be attending the lecture on Friday, and we are looking at the role of youth in the ICJ and the education process. What would be the youth doing? Because for now we're seeing them just sitting back, getting information, but there is no active participation in the process. And we're also formulating what would be the impact of a youth vote, and trying to figure out from 2017 or every year, how does the youth grow the electorate? And so from year to year, what would be the impact of us going to a referendum, and how much would the youth impact this referendum? Because if they are not aware of what is happening, then they might not come out to vote, and so that might impact on a referendum. So all of this will be discussed, and we're getting information to present on this issue. And I think what my students, what they're doing too, is asking other students there what they know about it, to formulate ideas on what needs to be done.
Now, the referendum unit has done presentations at the tertiary level schools. What is typically the feedback that you would get from your students there?
Typically when they go, they're always, the ones who have taken my class are like, sir, those are the things that we did in class, and some who first time they're hearing and seeing the information, they're like, wow, that was really eye-opening. I got a lot of information. But like with all presentations, I think some people come with their own biases, and some people have taken sides, no to the ICJ, yes to the ICJ. And so you end up with that in these lectures as well. Even in my classroom, I end up with that. Right? And for me, it's healthy to listen to both sides, and to be able to have a discourse on it just helps, because you are allowed to see my perspective, I'm allowed to see your perspective, and in a class setting, they get to see both perspectives. So that's the main feedback I get from these lectures that the referendum unit does. But I think my students are always like, this needs to be done more. More people need to be given a chance to listen to this. Because some are like what Rolando was saying, the discussion at home. I have some of them go back to tell their parents, oh, this, that about.
And even the conversations with their parents will be different from the conversation with their grandparents.
Right.
Because based on what generation you're in, you will have, there tends to be very fixed perspectives on these issues. Now, we've seen where conversations regarding the Belize-Guatemala dispute oftentimes gets very heated. Sometimes you have outside entities coming in and putting forward their position. What are you hoping to be the final objective after this lecture is over? With your high school students, your tertiary level students, and the presentations being made, what is the main objective?
From my perspective, I hope they raise the questions that they have, that they voice the questions. I believe that this is one of the weaknesses of the presentations that are done to date. Questions come out of what is presented. As soon as you hear something, in your mind may pop, yeah, but what about? And if you gave voice to those questions, it could help to shape further analysis, further research, further attempt to explain and to bring clarity for a broader understanding. And I say this out of I went to the one that was done by UB History Department, and it wasn't just two perspectives, there were actually three there that was also a third perspective to say this may not be the right time. And out of each presenter's questions popped into my head. I noted some of them. And in my mind, I'm thinking, too bad I couldn't have gone down to the presentation that was done by the Punta Gorda Town Board, because they had one during this September celebration. So another person's perspective there that was done. And if questions come out of ours from the young people, actually that may be something we could do. As for the questions, because it's out of the questions that you could further explain and clarify.
So with that said, have you invited representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the referendum unit to be in attendance to hear what these young people are saying?
That's correct. In fact, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has an ex officio, we call it, to the Belize History Association Executive Board. And so does the Belize Archives, Records and Services, the Ministry of Education. So they're part of the board of the BHA. They are aware of what's happening. And the moderator will actually be the representative that we have on that board, and Mr. Carlos Clark from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he recently did a graduate work in the UK, and a part of his research there included the Belize-Guatemala dispute. So he's coming back with some interesting perspectives to share, and definitely, and to moderate what the young people are saying. And so he'll be giving the introductions, where like wrap up the session with the young people. And of course, we'll definitely take questions. We have sufficient time, I think, to exhaust the questions that young people may have.
It's an afternoon session, right? 1:30 to 3:30, and you have 5 presenters?
4 presenters.
4 presenters, 2 from SJC, 1 from Ecumenical, and 1 from Independence.
That's right. That's right.
All right, and they're coming to talk about the dispute itself and about going to the ICJ.
That's correct.
So what have you learned in this process? There's a difference between doing a lecture series and inviting the persons who are experts in a field to do a presentation because you know they have the information. But this takes a bit more effort. And what have you learned about trying to put together the youth perspective on any national issue?
You have to be prepared for things to go different from what you expect. We really don't know, and for us, the lecturers in each of the school they have prepared their students and their school to present. But for us, we say that we want it to be the youth perspective.
Yeah.
So what if the young person who stands up there decides to put forward an argument that's a little different from what was prepared?
Yeah.
That may happen. And if it does, it's a part of the process from my perspective. That's a part of the process. So things could go awry. Things could go a little differently from the script.
No, I think it's extremely interesting, and I think Gian mentioned perhaps a point that we have not discussed before. Why are we not training young people to be the educators in this process? As you reminded me, I don't want to think about it because I do have a 6'4" age nephew, but this is the age that they become adults. They will be a part, if they choose, of the referendum vote and the next elections that are coming up. They're 17, 18, 19 usually within that time.
Importantly, Melanie, they become a part of the vote. It's not if they choose. By being a Belizean, whether you sit on the fence or you become engaged, you actually are contributing. And it is important to remind all Belizeans that your presence or non-presence impact what goes on. Not just the young people, but especially young people need to understand that, and their parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents who say they will not go, that actually is a vote. That is a decision. So that kind of thing is important to, for people to be mindful of. It's not a choice. This is our country. Absolutely. Our beloved, beautiful, wonderful jewel, Belize.
And we've had conversations before with young people, and I've heard some who say, you know, I know what it took for us to have this right to vote, and I respect it. But I think kudos to the association, to you all as organizers who are involved, for remembering that these are the persons who will essentially have to live with whatever consequence or whatever decision we make from this point forward for Belize, Guatemala issue or anything else. When does it take place? Is it open to the public, and how can people get more information?
Right. The event will take place at the George Price Center in the city of Belmopan. We've been kind enough, also I should mention some of the sponsors, including Social Security Board, the George Price Center as well. We have the Belmopan City Council providing refreshments for the attendees after. And so we are counting with support from various institutions. It takes place at the George Price Center. We invite tertiary students especially. We know we have confirmations from UB, from Gale, and from all of the respective institutions that are participating in the forum itself. And high schools are invited. For those that can't make it to the venue, we are ensuring that we have this on air.
So you'll be streaming live on Facebook, you said?
That's right. We'll be streaming live on Facebook. And we just want everybody to at least get a glimpse of the conversation. And then if they can't catch it all, we'll have it up on the Belize History Association website for them to view at their own timing. So 1:30 to 3:30 at the George Price Center.
On Friday, September 29th. Gian, do you think people will be surprised by what the young people have to say?
I think they will. I've been surprised by the way they think about this issue. Because just listening to them and going to the ICJ, they formulate their ideas based on what they see in our environment. And if they think our judicial system is corrupt, imagine what they think about a system out there. And they don't really understand how it works out there and what will occur. Because their first thing is, sorry, but you could pay the judge or pay off the police. And why they can't do that out there? Guatemala has a lot more money than us. And so it's interesting to see that this is how they formulate some of their ideas, because the reality is that we all do that too.
Yeah, we learn from our experiences.
From our experiences, what we know. And so we need to be proactive with them. Like what you mentioned, they are going to be voting. And so we need to educate them and give them the tools that they need to make an informed decision. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out.
I'm very interested to hear what they have to say too. And since I can't be in Bamapan, we can stream it on the Belize History Association's Facebook page on Friday the 29th, right?
And this too, we hope will inspire the upcoming ISCR conference in 2018. So we want to encourage our junior college participants and students around the country to consider this topic, to do further exploration for participation in the first social science conference.
Okay, and that's coming up in March.
Could I take a little moment to just kind of make a little announcement?
Yeah.
Because at SJC, we have one of our students, Kelvin Usher, who went missing on Sunday. And so we want to, I want to, on behalf of the students at SJC, make a plea for anybody who will have information about Kelvin Usher, because his family and all his friends at SJC are really worried about where he is. And if anybody out there could know anything about Kelvin and his whereabouts, if they could assist us, they could call his sister at 626-9447. We would really appreciate it. We're talking about youth perspective. One of our youths is missing, a very good friend of ours. And so we want to try to do anything. And thank you for allowing me to use this platform to try to reach out to get information about Kelvin.
What's the number for the sister again? There's his photo on the screen.
626-9447.
Okay.
626-9447.
All right.
That's
Thank you. Of course, we welcome that opportunity. We hope that he returns safely. And once again, as a reminder, the lecture series on youth perspective on Belize Guatemala dispute and ICJ takes place on Friday, 1:30 to 3:30 at the George Price Center, and you can watch it live streaming on Facebook. Very interested to hear what the young people have to say. Thank you for this initiative, and thank you for telling us more about it this morning.
Thank you for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the party in the park this weekend, so stay tuned.